After studying the film, I actually feel better about the Bills' win over the Browns. I'll explain why today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Well, folks, welcome in. I've taken the time to study the ALL-22 coaches film from the Bills' 23-20 win over the Browns, and I want to share my top takeaways with you today on this podcast. We'll do studs and duds. We'll talk snap counts. We'll talk about the defense. But I want to start with the offensive side of the football and discuss what was a very intentional game plan by this Bills offense. So we'll start with the passing offense. Josh Allen goes 12 of 19 for 130 yards. Not a super prolific day throwing the football. And what really stands out to me about these numbers is that Josh Allen had 6 incompletions, and they all stand out to me very, very vividly. Of course, 3 of those were drops. James Cook, Brandin Cooks, Dawson, Knox, 3 drops. And really, when you look at the Cooks drop and the Knox drop, it's a big contributing factor as to why this game was tighter than it should have been. Then you have the Dalton Kincaid play along the sideline that was ruled incomplete. Probably had a case for it to be complete, but that's probably one of those plays where you stick with the call on the field. And then Josh Allen had 2 misfires, one being the third down miss to Khalil Shakir, who was wide open, probably a touchdown. And then the next play, the Bills go for it on 4th down. Josh Allen has Tyrell Shavers open over the middle of the field, and he throws high and wide. Those were your 6 incompletions. Kind of stand out for frustrating reasons, but that was it. Had a decent chance to complete every pass. But ultimately, this was a very intentional game plan, like I've said before. And it was all about minimizing Myles Garrett and his potential to make an impact on this game. That's what they wanted to do, seemingly more than anything, was make sure that Myles Garrett didn't wreck the game. And so you saw the way they played it. A lot of the passes were rollouts away from Myles Garrett. And they put Myles Garrett in chase mode the entire game. And he had a very goofy half a sack. In no world was that a sack by Myles Garrett. But really, he just didn't have much of an impact because he really didn't have a chance to. The Bills were so intentional about rolling out the other way. And then getting hits on Myles Garrett. So obviously Deion Dawkins was the guy that had to do the most of this, but there were a lot of looks where David Edwards would slide and chip. The Bills would motion people across the formation and they would chip Myles Garrett. You know, there were times where it's a rollout and you would just take a player literally, and the entire intent of what they're doing is to roll and just hit Myles Garrett. There were 2-3 guys oftentimes committed to Myles Garrett in addition to rolling the other direction. So they wanted to get hits on him. They wanted to make him chase, and they wanted to minimize his impact in the game. And so I think they were successful in doing that. Another game here where only 3 passes were thrown to the left. That was a carryover element from last week's game. Just not a lot of throws to the left. I think Josh Allen's accuracy kind of dips that way, but when you're rolling to the right and you're moving the pocket to the right consistently, of course, generally most of your throws are going to be to the right-hand side of the field. Play action was a huge part of the game plan. 48%, 11 of 23 dropbacks. Josh Allen executed a play action pass. He went 6 of 9 for 76 yards on play action. Only one screen in this game. It was 9 yards to Khalil Shakir. It was the play that set up the 2nd and 1 Josh Allen circus play. And so that was the only screen of the game, which maybe you thought there could be a few more based on, one of the ways that you slow up a pass rush is some screens, but the Bills didn't even really mess with that. Now, there's something that really stands out about the way that the Browns played the Bills. And I said in the post-game podcast that it felt like they played a lot of cover one, middle of the field closed type coverage shells, and it was more than I even thought. 91% of the coverage shells that the Browns presented to the Bills were middle of the field close, one high, middle of the field close. They ran cover one on 74% of dropbacks. The Browns played man coverage on 78% of dropbacks. The next highest of any team in Week 16 was Dallas at 46%. You're talking a 32% higher clip of man coverage than any other defense. So you had the Browns at 78%, Dallas at 46%. Nobody else was higher than 36. In fact, most teams were lower than 30%. It's a loud and clear message. The league does not respect what the Buffalo Bills have at wide receiver. I mean, you want to talk about as disrespectful of a message. And look, I'm not saying that they're wrong, but a message of pure disrespect that we don't care what you have at outside receiver. Keeping in mind, Denzel Ward, one of their starting corners, was not available. And Sam Webb replaced him. Who's Sam Webb? Good question. A 2020 undrafted free agent from Missouri Western State, who has played less than 400 snaps across his career, spending time with the Raiders, Panthers, Titans, and Browns. They said, yeah, we'll put that guy out there, and we'll play man coverage more than any other team probably in any other game this year will play, and we'll live with it. Wow. Wow, right? Loud and clear message. We don't respect your receiver talent. Josh Allen goes 12 of 19 for 130 yards. I'm sure Myles Garrett impacts that a lot when you don't have to cover for that long because that guy's rushing. On top of just the way the Bills played this game, the Bills didn't come into this game thinking we want to attack perimeter matchups, our receivers versus your corners. And that's the way it needs to be because you don't have the players to do it. But when I looked at those coverage distribution metrics this week and I saw where Cleveland came in and just how astronomically higher it was than any other team when it comes to one high, middle of the field closed, cover one, and man coverage, my goodness, did I feel things when I saw those numbers and how it aligned with what I thought I watched on the broadcast, and of course, watching the film and really seeing it come to life. And here's what it comes down to. If you had a receiver that could consistently win those one-on-ones, my goodness, how good could this offense be? Because you can run the ball well. You got a good slot player in Khalil Shakir. You've got tight ends that are really good in the passing game. You're only missing those perimeter wide receiver threats. I'm sure there's a scheme element to this. It's becoming undeniably clear that there isn't a single receiver under Joe Brady that I think has met expectations outside of Khalil Shakir. So in terms of true perimeter receivers, not a single one has met expectations. And so I think there's a scheme piece of this. There's probably a design element in terms of what this offense is catered to become, which is more formation alignments. those types of things. But just imagine if they did have a guy. Be one heck of an offense, right? They don't have him. And I'm concerned that this scheme just doesn't unlock much in the way of those outside receivers, because literally not a single one. Do the inventory. Even the players that were on the team when Joe Brady became the offensive coordinator, Diggs, Davis, Sherfield, Hardy, Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, Brandin Cooks, Josh Palmer. You know, the proof is right there. Like, at some point, it's not every receiver that they bring in that has been reasonably successful, some of them somewhere else, and all of a sudden can't do a thing. There's got to be something about the offense and the offensive coordinator that is limiting these wide receivers, because teams are daring the Bills to go after them, and they can't and they won't, and there's just a lot of missing production. If that's the way that an NFL defense is going to play you, my goodness, there should be hell to pay. And there just isn't. There just isn't. And I think that says a lot about the Bills personnel, the Bills coaching, and the infrastructure of this offense. All right, let's talk about the rushing offense on the other side of it. We'll talk about a whole lot more as well. My keys, studs and duds, the defense, all coming up here next, folks. Be sure to stick with me. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel is going to let you jump into that moment. They have live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props that update as guys heat up. You can bet on the next touchdown score, drive results, totals, and more. It's going to keep you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. Of course, we've got a full slate of games on Christmas, and if you're going to be watching those, get in on the live betting. It's going to make it even more exciting. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, let's talk about this rushing offense. That I think there's a lot of good, but let's be honest, it got completely cold in the second half. So the Bills overall run the ball 29 times, 164 yards, 3 touchdowns. They opened this game with 3 drives that ended in 3 rushing touchdowns. Overall, a 62% success rate rushing the football. It's really good. Number 3 among all teams in Week 16. They were especially good with their zone runs, a 75% success rate on zone runs. But I can't help but think about how good it was in the first half and how it really just didn't do much in the second half. So here's the splits. In the first half, the Bills ran the ball 16 times for 133 yards and 3 touchdowns, a success rate of 87.5%. It's unbelievable, right? In the second half, 13 rushes for 31 yards, no touchdowns, and a 31% success rate. That's 27th in the NFL in Week 16 in second half success rate. So they really did a good job in the first half, but I mean, the second half, it was pretty much non-existent. So why is that the case? Well, I think they became very predictable. They're running the ball to the right. They just didn't want to deal with Myles Garrett in this game. So they just walled him off on the backside and ran to the right. So the Bills ran the ball 29 times. Now, 2 of those were quarterback sneaks, 2 of those were scrambles, 2 of those were kneel downs. So they traditionally ran the ball 23 times. 20 of those 23 runs were to the right. 3 were to the left. Well, it became pretty obvious what the Bills were trying to do offensively. I don't think the Bills particularly cared that the Browns knew that, but I do think you can point to being so right-hand dominated with everything you did offensively, and that contributes heavily to the overall disappearance of the offense in the second half. Remember, they came in and scored 3 straight touchdowns to start this game. And then the offense did nothing. And I think you can maybe point to Josh Allen's foot injury as part of that. I'm not so sure about that. Certainly the drops mattered a ton, and you would have had a lot more production. But after those 3 straight touchdown drives, the Bills had 6 drives. They got 50 total yards. They went punt, field goal, and they got a field goal because it was after the Daquan Jones interception. They only got 2 yards on that drive. Then they go turnover on downs when they go 7 plays, 36 yards. 3 and out, 5 and out, and then the end of game sequence. So, like, eventually they're like, okay, everything's going to the right. Let's just take care of that. And it worked. So the Bills obviously wanted to play this game a certain way. Now, one thing that I thought was a good thing that Cleveland did in this game that felt a little bit different defensively than other teams is they slow played their backside linebackers. And, James is a really good cutback runner. It's not hard to know that. And he was a really good cutback runner in this game. They ran some inside zone where, James would press and make some great cuts, great lateral cuts, and find some holes. But what they started to do is they slow play that backside backer, and that helps them not overrun the play, right? That's what James is so good at making you do, is press, make you overrun, and then go back across the grain, and he gets explosive runs. They did a good job of slow playing the backside a little bit to make sure that they didn't overcommit. I thought some of the key players when it comes to running the football outside of the obvious James Cook, Spencer Brown and Jackson Hawes, they were phenomenal with how they blocked in this game. And Spencer Brown, man, he's so good. If he's got a guy on top of him, or if he's uncovering, he gets to space. He just does a great job of creating space in the run game. And Jackson Hawes was very dynamic with opening some gaps as well in this football game. So anyways, the Bills, they wanted to play this game a certain way. They had the right idea, I think. They lived with limitations because of that. They picked their spots throwing the football. And I think that's the part of this game plan, I think, that the opportunities that I think the Bills expected to be there were, but the execution piece wasn't. So the 2 huge drops, Brandin Cooks, Dawson Knox, the missed throw on that Khalil Shakir play, that was an awesome design. It's 3rd and 4. They got a trip set. They all look like they're running shallows, and then all of a sudden Shakir whips out the other way, wide open. Josh Allen mails the throw. And I'll be honest, like, this game is probably a rout if just a little bit of that doesn't happen. Not to mention the defense, which we'll get to. There were some goofy drive extenders that aren't really sustainable elements that contributed to this game being closer. I think this probably should have been a 35-10 type game, and it winds up being a 23-20 type game. Let's recap my keys for the Bills. Remember my primer episode, I talk about keys, and one of the things I want to start doing on these all-22 reviews is, bringing those keys up and talking about how it played out. So my 3 keys for the Bills offense against the Browns defense, number 1 was to protect Josh Allen. I think they obviously did that. They did their best to mitigate Myles Garrett's impact. Josh Allen did get sacked twice, but both of those are on Josh Allen. The circus sack that nobody in the world could ever explain. And then the other time he took a sack, they put Myles Garrett on the right side, and Josh Allen he turned down multiple open guys and ran into Carson Schlesinger. I mean, the Bills had 3 routes down the field. The Browns played with 6 over top of it. There was nowhere to go down the field. He has 2 checkdowns. And Josh, it's like you're looking down the field that they have 6 over 3. There's going to be no space. You got to go immediately to check down mode there. And he never does. And he gets outside the pocket and runs right into Carson Schlesinger. Yeah, so both sacks are completely Josh Allen's fault. But the key of protecting Josh Allen, mission accomplished. Number 2, I said, don't beat yourself. And I looking at my notes, I said, it's going to be okay to punt. And I wish Josh Allen believed that a little bit more a couple of times. But I think they did a good job of not beating themselves. They didn't give away the football. They only had 2 tackles for loss the whole game, Cleveland, and it was both of those sacks. That's it. And I'm not sure the Bills had an offensive penalty. They had 5 for 35 yards, and I seem to remember those being on special teams and defense. So if they had an offensive penalty, it's not standing out to me in any type of significant way. So, yeah, good job not beating yourself. Number 3, as I said, they needed to attack the Browns slot corner, Myles Garrett, who is just a guy that struggled this year. And specifically with Khalil Shakir, they threw at him 3 times. He gave up 3 catches for 25 yards. I wish they did it a little bit more. So I'm not sure that key was really manifested in this game plan, but at the same time, if Khalil gets an accurate throw from Josh Allen on that whip route, he's got a 5th catch, probably a touchdown, and I don't know what he would have had 60, 70 yards, something like that, in a game that the Bills win by a couple scores. Offensive snap counts, the Bills ran 50 plays of offense. Josh Allen, 50 snaps. At running back, James Cook, 28 of 50. Ty Johnson, 16. Ray Davis, 8. Reggie Gilliam, 11 at fullback. At tight end, Dawson Knox, 34 of 50 snaps. Jackson Hawes, 32. Dalton Kincaid, 19. Obviously, there's a lot of load management with Kincaid. People talk about there being a predictable element. I think 7 of those were run plays, so 12 passes, 7 runs. It's not a tell. It doesn't mean because Dalton Kincaid's on the field that the Bills are going to pass the ball. And then Alec Anderson played 2 snaps. A wide receiver, Josh Palmer, 35. Tyrell Shavers, 29. Khalil Shakir, 24. Brandin Cooks, 12. Mecole Hardman did not play a snap of offense. So they put him, they went through this whole thing to get him back up so he can do 1 punt return. Okay. And then the offensive line, all of the starters played 50 snaps except for Spencer Brown played 48. Ryan Vandemark came in for the last 2 kneel downs. I'll talk about injuries later in this episode, but I think there's something to be mindful of with Spencer Brown and the reason he didn't play those kneel downs. We'll talk about that later. All right, the next segment is going to be all defense, and we'll talk a little bit about injuries, and we'll do studs and duds. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. Car shopping should feel exciting, not confusing. And with CarGurus, you get that confidence that you deserve. They cut through all the noise so you can actually see the best deals on the cars you want, because when it comes to making a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. And CarGurus makes that whole process simple by giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else so that you can shop the way that you want. You can use CarGurus deal ratings to compare cars quickly without having to guess whether the price is fair. You'll love being able to filter by everything, mileage, trim, features, so that you're only seeing the cars that actually fit what you want. And their in-depth vehicle reviews help you understand what ownership actually looks like, not just how the car looks online. And having those verified dealerships and upfront pricing makes the whole thing feel transparent and stress-free. CarGurus connects you with a trusted dealership, many trusted dealerships, for a transparent and hassle-free buying process. With over 4 million listings, the most of any major online automotive marketplace, you're always going to find the best deal. So shop the way you want with tools, data, and unbiased deal ratings that make it all easy. Buy or sell your next car today at CarGurus.com. That's CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com. All right, let's talk about this defense. Pass defense first. Shedeur Sanders goes 20 of 30 for 157 yards, has a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Bills pressured him a good amount, 46% of his dropbacks he was pressured on. It's the 8th highest of any quarterback in Week 16. I think it's plain as can be that that's a very, very limited passing offense. Shedeur Sanders is a limited player that's inexperienced, and he doesn't have much around him. His average depth of target was 2.4 yards. 91% of the passing yards that Cleveland got came after the catch. There was no down the field or drop back passing. I'm not even talking like down the field, like deep throws. I'm talking just like intermediate, 5 or more yards down the field. They didn't have anything. The whole offense is checkdowns. And the way that they scheme up checkdowns is like, it's really, it doesn't really look like an NFL offense if we're being candid. And so it's such a limited operation, and that's why some of my frustration with the Bills defense in this game was, how do you not just absolutely suffocate all of it? You don't ever need to run, zone and drift in zones. Like, get ready to trigger and drive forward. Play a lot more man, So Obviously, it wasn't a super productive day. They didn't really do much, but some of the dink and dunk that they were able to get off while you're seeing, players drifting in zones is a little frustrating to me because I think it is really limited. They have a tight end that's a catch and run tight end, and what else do they have? A Jerry Jeudy who can sometimes win a route, but inconsistent hands. They don't have anything. They have checkdowns. 91% of their passing yards came after the catch. I study football all the time. I look at these numbers after every game. I've never seen anything like that. 91%. Rushing defense. The Bills gave up 170 rushing yards on 31 carries. Honestly, a lot of that was on scrambles and a couple of end arounds. Runs by running backs, they went 22 for 81. 3.7 yards per carry. I thought the Bills did a reasonably good job defending regular run plays. Now, that doesn't excuse that there was a couple of end arounds and a few scrambles that got them, but I think traditional run defense was better than maybe some people felt it was in this game. I thought their defensive line competed really well for their gaps. TJ Sanders, I think, on the inside was a benefit to this run defense. I thought he leveraged and played the run well. I thought he did a pretty good job of dealing with doubles. Daquan Jones is always a pro. Thought Deon Walker had some good moments. Phi Mathis, he's rough, but he plays hard. I would rather have seen Larry Ogunjobi than Phi Mathis, I'll tell you that. But I thought it was pretty much fine. And Matt Milano with some good downhill fills. So I thought the run defense was better than maybe it felt like. One thing that I think about with this defensive effort in this overall game was some of the drive extenders that are not really things that you point to as sustainable ways of giving up points and yards. They wind up having 4 scoring drives, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals. Now, the first touchdown drive, hat tip, it was a good opening drive. They had the end around for 21 yards, and ultimately they give up a touchdown. Terrell Bernard gets sucked up on a play fake, and they hit a play action throw to Harold Fan, and they score. Hat tip, nice drive. Then they get a field goal on their second drive that has 3 crazy missed tackles. Greg Rousseau misses a sack on 3rd down. Dorian Williams misses a tackle for a loss on 3rd down. Terrell Bernard has a miss in space that winds up being a 20-yard play for Cleveland, and they ultimately get a field goal. The third quarter touchdown drive, the Bills had him in 3rd and 16. They stopped him. Matt Milano sticks his leg out and trips the guy and extends the drive. They wind up getting a touchdown. And then that fourth quarter field goal drive, they had a really good drive starter, a very creative 26-yard check down that they got a bunch of yards on. That's what I'm saying. They probably should have scored 10 points. So I just honestly felt better after watching the tape and feeling like the Bills didn't do that much game plan specific stuff for Cleveland. And they had some things that went in their favor that I don't think are sustainable, like 3 third down missed tackles on the same drive. Like a 3rd and 16 stop where Matt Milano unnecessarily trips the guy. It's a 35-10 game. Those are 2 punts. One of those drops doesn't happen. You can see what I'm trying to say. I mean, I know that you can't really do that. You could say, well, if this doesn't happen and that, I understand that, but there's some goofy in this game is the point that I'm making that led to a much more narrow game than it should have been. Let's recap my keys for the Bills defense against this offense. I said, number 1, stop the run and don't play the game Cleveland wants. Yeah, I'm not sure the Bills really did that. Cleveland, 39% of their runs went into light boxes. That's the 10th highest rate in the NFL. The Bills certainly did not sell out to stop the run, and maybe they didn't need to because the traditional run game, they did a pretty decent job. But I'm not really sure that I could say that was a key that I highlighted that the Bills aligned with and did that, and it was a contributing reason to why they won the game. Number 2, as I said, you got to make Shedeur Sanders' head spin. Talked about varying looks and what you can do to make him uncomfortable. I don't think that there was ever a moment that I felt like Shedeur Sanders was super comfortable, like in control or in command of the game. When he had to do traditional drop back passes, he was lost. So I thought the Bills did a good job of that. At number 3, as I said, hunt the football. I talked about the giveaways that Cleveland is prone to giving up, the turnover-worthy throw rate, Shedeur Sanders holding the ball. Yeah, I thought that was true. The Bills had 2 takeaways, 3 sacks, and 2 tackles for loss, which is really solid. That's 10.6% of the Browns' offensive plays were either a negative play or a takeaway. I think that's a pretty good job. Defensive snap counts, the Bills played 66 snaps of defense. At D tackle, Daquan Jones, 41 of 66 snaps. Deon Walker, 36. TJ Sanders, 34. It's good seeing TJ Sanders back inside. I thought he did some really good things, particularly against the run. Math is 25 snaps. He plays hard. At defensive end, Greg Rousseau, 45 of 66 snaps. Joey Bosa, 40. AJ Epinesa, 26. Andre Jones, 23. My apologies. I kept on calling him Andre Holmes. It's Andre Jones, 23 snaps. I thought he did a reasonably good job. Practice squad call-up. I don't think he was ever just completely out of position. Had a couple of pressures, a couple of good crashes down against the run. Thought he was okay. Javon Solomon, not a single snap of defense. That's the player I would have inactive, and I would have Larry Ogunjobi over him. At linebacker, Terrell Bernard played 61 snaps. Struggled. Matt Milano played 61 snaps. Thought his impact was pretty obvious. Flying around, making plays. Looking good. Dorian Williams, 22 snaps. Shaq Thompson, 11. At corner, Christian Benford, all 66. Trey White, 47. Max Harrison, 18. It's another game in a row where it skews more towards Trey White. I don't think there's anything that Max Harrison's doing wrong. I think they're all playing pretty well, and I think the Bills wound up playing a lot more zone than maybe they anticipated in this game, and so you saw more Trey White. But I don't really read too much into this. You know, White's playing more than Harrison, but they're all playing well. Taron Johnson, 44 snaps. I thought he was pretty stable in this game. At safety, Cole Bishop, 66 snaps. Jordan Poyer, 58, and Cam Lewis, 9. And it's another game where Jordan Hancock doesn't play any defense, so I'm glad that he got his feet wet, but the more you watched him play, the more you realize he's just not really ready to go. And you don't want to live with kind of him costing you at times like he has. So I'm glad that he got some experience, but he feels like more of a next year thing. Studs and duds, my studs, James Cook, obviously, right? Spencer Brown, Jackson Hawes, Connor McGovern. I thought he was really good in this game, getting to the second level. Very sound in pass pro. Greg Rousseau, obviously. Jordan Poyer and Matt Milano. My duds, Brandin Cooks. Come on, man. Catch the ball, dude. This is kind of getting old. You're getting open down the field, which we can't appreciate, but catch the ball. Terrell Bernard. Real quick on some injury stuff. Sean McDermott said that Josh Allen with a foot, Jordan Poyer with a hamstring, Daquan Jones with a calf, and Shaq Thompson with a neck are all day-to-day. Find myself pretty concerned about Josh Allen and Jordan Poyer. Sean was pretty tight-lipped when talking about Josh. He's always pretty tight-lipped when he's talking about injuries, but you know, kind of a lot of we'll see when it comes to if it's going to affect his practice schedule. Talked about it being sore. I don't know. I don't feel good about it. We'll see. Jordan Poyer with a hamstring. We know that he wasn't available to finish the game. Hamstrings are never just like a day, right? Like, I'm concerned about both of those situations. Spencer Brown, if you watch the game, the last play before the 2 kneel downs, they run the tush push, they get the first down, but tell Spencer Brown like his wrist was bothering him, and he kind of checked himself out of the game. Sean McDermott didn't say anything about it in his press conference, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing to be concerned about. So I'll be monitoring that wrist, or maybe it's a shoulder. I don't know, but I don't feel like Spencer got out of there clean. He did say that Matt Prater and Jordan Phillips are improving. The Chiefs did sign Shane Buechele off the Bills practice squad to their active roster. So now the Bills are in need of a third quarterback. You need someone to run the scout team. It's not a significant loss for the Bills, but it's an annoying one because you know he's got an important role to fill. You know he's got a great relationship with Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky, and I mean, I'm happy for him that he gets to go be on a 53-man roster, and I'm sure that's great. He'll get paid more and all that. But, you know, I felt like that room, you know, that quarterback room, the 3 of those guys and what Shane Buechele does for the show team is not something that's easy to just like dismiss and figure out at this point in the season. So something that the Bills will have to sort out here the rest of the way. All right, folks, there you have it. All-22 review is in the books. Our next conversations will be about Bills and Eagles. So we'll have Bill Squad for you on Tuesday. It's going to air live at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube, and then it'll post as a podcast. Then you'll get crossover Thursday, my primer on Bills Eagles, final thoughts, and then before you know it, the last 2 regular season games of the year, both at Highmark Stadium, hosting the Eagles and then the Jets. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills! And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.